Hi, third grade friends. It's Mr. Lake. Welcome back. Today, we will be doing Lesson 11 in ELA. If you'll follow along, I'll read our intention and success criteria. We are learning to describe how a character's actions contribute to the sequence of events. We will be successful when we can describe a character's actions in a story, describe the sequence of events in a story, and describe how the character's actions affect the sequence of the events in the story. Today, we will be reading Chapter 8 of The Case of the Gasping Garbage. One word in this chapter, elementary, it means kind of like what primary school, like grade school, like what we're in, or when something is in its early stages. You'll hear a lot of scientists use this word, especially when they're just beginning their experiment. Chapter 8, Desperate Measures. By looking at that title, what kind of connections do you have or predictions could you make from chapter 7, what we learned with Miss Crump, Lily Crump, and her mystery, and this title in chapter 8? Yeah, that Drake and Nell are really desperate for work, but they're also really, really desperate to solve this mystery for Lily, right? A lot of mystery was in chapter 7 about the ink and who wrote the love letter. Let's read to find out what happens. Chapter 8, Desperate Measures. Meanwhile, Lily Crump waited at her house and waited and waited. Why don't they call? She thought. She wrung her hands. She paced back and forth. She stared out the window. You see, Lily Crump was lonely. She had no brothers or sisters. She didn't even have a dog or a cat. All she had was an itty bitty fish with buggy eyes. So when the phone finally rang, Lily leaped to answer. Hello? Her heart was pounding. Lily? Lily recognized Drake's voice. Yes? We've got your answer, Miss Crump. Come to the lab immediately. I'll be right there, squeaked Lily. Lily was true to her word. Within 5 minutes, she arrived. I ran the whole way, she gasped. Now tell me, before I die, who is it? Who's in love with me? Drake pushed up his glasses. Observe, he said, pointing to the strips of paper. Inks are not all the same. Certainly not, agreed Nell. An ink may look black, said Drake. Or blue, added Nell. But they are in fact of many different colors. Nell and I separated the colors in a process called chromatography. It's quite elementary, really. As alcohol moves through the ink, the different colors separate. That's because, Nell explained, the different colors do not have the same weight. They move faster or slower depending upon how heavy they are. She pointed at the strips of paper with her long wooden pointer. As you can see, each ink is like a fingerprint. All we had to do was match the ink and the letter. With the ink and the paper strips, finished Drake proudly, and each strip is carefully labeled, so we know whose pen it was. Let's pause there for a second, friends. What actions does Lily take so far in this chapter? Yeah, she's really ambitious, really nervous. She's wanting to find out who it is. So she's really leaping in there to find out who her secret admirer is. And what actions do Drake and Nell take? Yeah, they're continuing to really, really hash out this mystery. And they're really elaborate with their explanation to Lily Crump and how the ink is tied to the person they think it is. Let's read on. And asked Lily, her eyes wide, whose was it? Who wrote me the letter? Drake and Nell glanced at each other. Drake swallowed hard. The science of love was proving to be quite a challenge. You tell her, he said. Nell took a deep breath. Mrs. Crump, I think you'd better sit down. Lily sat down. She could hardly wait. It was baloney, Nell finally blurted. Bubba Mahoney baloney. Suddenly there was silence. A deep silence. A deep, dark silence. A deep, dark, dreadful silence. A silence rather like when you've just found out that your favorite football team has been beaten 85-0, or perhaps when your teacher tells you that yes, your assignment was due today. That's really silence. Drake couldn't stand it any longer. He shook Lily's shoulders. Snap out of it, he ordered. Lily didn't respond. Instead, she slid off the stool like a wet noodle and fell on the floor. Drake was desperate. He knew that if he didn't do something soon, Lily might go into shock. After that, a coma. After that, well, he knew that whatever it was, it would be quite awful. Quick, Science Nail, hollered Drake. Pour a beaker of water over Miss Crump's head. There's not a second to lose. 400 milliliters should do the trick. Check. Splush, splutter! Dazed and drowned, Lily stared at them. Her hair dangled in limp, soggy strings like a wet mop that hadn't been wrung yet. Speak, ordered Drake. Oh, baloney, Lily said. She clasped her hands together. Huh? Drake and Nell looked at her in astonishment. Thank you, Detective Drake and Scientist Nell. Thank you, thank you. This is the happiest day of my life. Lily gave each of them a teeny tiny hug. Drake returned the love letter along with a business card. Call us any time. Oh, I will, Lily said. Then she flew out of the room as fast as her little legs could carry her. After she was gone, Nell shook her head. There are some things science can't explain. Indeed, Scientist Nell, Drake said. Indeed. That evening, Drake wrote in his lab notebook. Love letter mystery solved. Baloney the culprit. Don't understand this thing called love, a mystery. Received one fish with buggy eyes as payment. Must return in 1 week. Paid in full. Well, friends, that brings us to the end of the case of the gasping garbage. I hope that you really enjoyed this story. Would you recommend this book to a friend? Be ready to share your thoughts with your teacher. I really enjoyed reading this story with you as we were working on some skills. Remember your discussion questions and be ready to discuss with your class today. What actions does Lily take in this chapter? What actions does Drake and Nell take in this chapter? And both of those discussion questions can be kind of connected with events from chapter 7, or when you're talking about Drake and Nell throughout the whole story. How does it really relate to them by the end of this by the end of chapter 8? And would you recommend this book to a friend? Your assignment today is to create a character map from the case of the gasping garbage. You are to choose a main character from the case of the gasping garbage, and then you will complete the map by filling in information you've learned about those characters. Make sure to get this finished so that your teacher can see it and maybe give you some feedback. Let's take a quick glance at our learning intention for today. We are learning to describe how a character's actions contribute to the sequence of events. You will be successful when you can describe a character's actions in a story. You're going to do that as you think about Lily and Nell and Drake in this story, and describe the sequence of events in a story, and then describe how the character's actions affect this sequence of events in a story. There's been a lot going on in this story, so I hope that you really enjoyed it and you can make all these connections. Have a great day, and don't forget to read for at least 20 minutes of fun today. Have a good day. See you next time.